concept reflected representations expressing the higher order unity of rational self-consciousness, which is called apperception. Intuitions, by contrast, are object-directed representations that are singular, sense-related, object-dependent, immediate or direct, referential, and non-conceptual. Understanding and sensibility are both subserved by the faculty of imagination, which, when taken generically, is the source or engine of all sorts of synthesis, but which, when taken as a dedicated or task-sensitive cognitive faculty, more specifically generates the spatial and temporal forms of intuition, novel mental imagery in conscious sensory states, reproductive imagery or memories, and schemata, which are supplementary rules for interpreting general conceptual rules for interpreting general conceptual rules in terms of more specific figural or spatio-temporal forms and sensory images. Just as understanding and sensibility are subserved by the bottom-up cognitive processing of the imagination, so correspondingly they are also superserved by the top-down cognitive processing of the faculty of reason, which produces logical inferences, carries out practical choices and decisions, also sometimes called practical judgments, impose coherence and consistency on all sorts of cognitions, and above all, recognize and implement strongly modal concepts such as necessary truth and unconditional obligation in the form of law-like principle. Finally, the objective unity of any cognition whatsoever is guaranteed by the faculty of apperception or rational self-consciousness, which play the executive role in the corporate organization of the mind by introducing a single higher order unity into all its lower order representations, and whose characteristic output is the cogito-like self-directed representation. The word I think, or the phrase I think, as in I think about X, where X is some concept, say the concept of being a philosopher, or I think that P, where that P is some proposition, say, for example, the proposition that Kant is a philosopher. The phrase I think, according to Kant, is the vehicle of all concept whatsoever, because it is both a necessary condition of the unity of every objective representation and also automatically implements one or another of a set of primitive, pure, or logical forms or functions of unity in judgments or thoughts. The pure concepts of the understanding are the categories in the several semantic constituents of that cognition. So cognition is important for judgment. The power of judgment, while a non-basic faculty, is nevertheless the central cognitive faculty of the human mind. This is one of the items that Kant emphasized this is because judging brings together all the otherwise uncoordinated sub-acts and sub-contents of intuitions, conceptualization, imagination, and reason, where apperception is the most important part. Apperception or rational self-consciousness for the purpose of generating a single cognitive product. The judgment under the overarching pure concepts of the understanding or categories, thereby fully integrating the several distinct cognitive faculties and their several distinct sorts of representational information, and thereby also constituting a single rational animal. So for Kant, rational humans are judging animals. So human beings or people are different from other kinds of animals or other kind of living things. Is that the rational part? Logicians before Kant tend to define judgment as a representation of a relation between two concepts. This pre-Kantian definition implies that all judgments are of subject-predicated form. But in fact, as Kant points out here, following the Stoic logicians, some judgment, for example, disjunctive judgment and hypothetical conditional judgments, are truth-value relational complexes of subject-predicate judgment. That means something that you make judgment on. Sometimes it's fact plus the value that you put on the things that you are judging, and thus have essentially truth functional form, not subject-predicate form. Kant also offers a radically new conception of the judgment as a higher order binding function for different types of lower order objective representation content. In a pre-critical essay, The False Subtlety of the Four Syllogic Figures, he says that a judgment is an act of logical predication whereby a concept is applied to a thing, as expressed by the copula in quotation mark, is or are. Judgment is the mediate cognition of an object, hence the representation of a representation of it. In every judgment, there is a concept that holds of many representations, and that among these many also comprehends a given representation which is then immediately referred to the object. All judgments are functions of unity among our representation, since instead of an immediate representation, a higher one, which comprehends this and other representation under itself, is used for the cognition of the object, and many possible cognitions are hereby drawn together into one. These concepts are quite difficult to understand and comprehend, so you have to make clear that the cognition part or cognitive domain in the human mind or in the brain, in the conscious mind of the people is the important and essential function. A judgment is nothing other than the way to bring given cognitions to the objective unity of apperception, So apperception is the key concept. The capacity of the apperception is important for you to perceive the object. You know, the objective, what to be judged. So that is the aim of the copula is in them. So you have to be able to distinguish the objective unity of given representation of the subjective. Between the objective and subjective, you have to be able to separate and to understand and perceive properly. Pure general logic deals with concepts, judgments, and inference, corresponding exactly to the functions and order of those powers of the mind, which are comprehended under the broad designation of understanding in general. If the understanding in general is explained as the faculty of rules, if you understand the faculty of rules, then the power of judgment is the faculty of subsuming under rules, that is, of determining whether something stands under a given rule or not. So you have to have, at least you have to have the rules, and then you follow that rules as the basic standard for you to make judgment whether something under a given rule or not. If it's not under the rule, it should be judged wrong. If it's go under the rule, it can be just as it's right. If you accept the rule. This topic about the theory of judgment is quite difficult for you to understand. It's rather abstract, so you should read it over at least 2 or 3 times before you can understand. And then you try to find some examples around you to see if it fits. The major part of Kantian theory is that you have to know what is the rule that link or related to what you are going to make judgment on, and then see if the thing that you are judging is going under the rule or not. If it's not, you can make judgment that that thing is not right or is not good. Only it's being good, only it's follow the rule that you have in mind. So anything that you have to judge, you need to judge, you have to make judgment based on moral and ethical concept. Moral and ethical concept could be used as a rule, and then you follow that rule. You know that what is good, what is right, it should be something that do not do any harm to anyone, including yourself and some other people, that can be considered or can be judged as right or good. So good luck for you to study this topic, and then we will discuss it in the class later on. Thank you for your attention. That's all.